Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Program will start in about 2 minutes. Please find your seats. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Rick Kessler, publisher and executive editor of RVBusiness, and I'll serve as your host and MC. On behalf of RVBusiness, the organizing committee, and the event coordinator, BJ Thompson, welcome to the 2024 RV Industry Power Breakfast. Once again, and thanks in large part to this sparkling new convention hall here at the Northern Indiana Event Center on the RVMH Hall of Fame campus, we have a record-breaking crowd, and I think you all can agree this is pretty damn impressive. Over 1,350 people are here this morning. They've gathered to, I gotta stay on my script or else I'm really gonna screw up. There are 1,350 people who've gathered this morning to hear from thought leaders from our industry, as well as from a few others who will share their views on leadership, the economy, and other topics that undoubtedly will have a lasting impact on all of us. We'll also hear from a few organizations that are beneficiaries of the RV industry's immeasurable generosity. In fact, let's take a minute to note just how generous our industry is. Across North America, the greater RV family, including manufacturers, suppliers, dealerships, campgrounds, have fully embraced philanthropy as a foundational pillar of their company's corporate social responsibility. Whether it's making a child's wish come true, building a house for a homeless family, blowing up 150,000 balloons in this building, or raising millions of dollars at an annual auction to help kids get a better start in life, there are, quite literally, millions of people and millions of communities who are better off because of our industry's willingness to help others in need, and that, my friends, is worth celebrating. Also worth celebrating are the sponsors of the 2024 Power Breakfast, like my segue. Without their generosity, none of us would be here this morning. In alphabetical order, they are Ericsel, Cummins, Dometic, Forest River, KOA, the RV Dealers Association, the RV Industry Association, Spartan RV Chassis, Thor Industries, Wells Fargo CDF, and Winnebago Industries. In addition, we also have 75 companies, the names of which may be found in your program, who saw enough value for their team in this event to become a table sponsor. And again, we thank them. Thank you, Matt. This year's Power Breakfast comes at a time when we find ourselves stuck in the muck of a challenging market that apparently can't find the exit. We continue to face all too familiar headwinds, most notably lukewarm retail demand, driven in large part by high interest rates, and I'm sure we'll hear more of that from our economist later. But on a brighter note, shipments are up 9.3% through the first quarter, and the long-term health of the industry continues to be very positive. Outdoor recreation in general and RVing and camping in particular continue to resonate with the public, and that is something I believe KOA's Toby O'Rourke will speak on a little bit later as well. But it's not like we're all just sitting around, quietly waiting for the market to return. We're all making moves to better ourselves so that when consumers do feel better about the economy, we're poised to grow market share. That's what resilient industries do. They make plans to get better. And that's what the Power Breakfast is designed to do. Equip us all with relevant and timely information that will help us do better at what we do. On a more sobering note, I'd like for us to take a brief moment to remember those from our industry we've lost since the last Power Breakfast. And I'm going to mention a few names here, and I apologize if I omit anybody by accident. But let's remember Dan Pearson of Pleasureland RV and the former chair of RVDA, former Coachman Industries CEO Claire Skinner, who also served as chair of the RVIA, Steve Adams, whose holdings included at one time Camping World and Good Sam, and lastly, Steve Paul, who just passed away after a long-time career in the industry, and the last 12 of those years were with Lippert. For those and others from our industry who have passed, please join me in observing a brief moment of silence. Thank you. We are just about ready to welcome the first of this morning's speakers to the stage, but first I need to pass along just two quick announcements. First, we at RVBusiness will soon kick off this year's Top 50 Dealers Awards program, so in the coming weeks, we'll be reaching out to many of you in this room, asking you to nominate those North American RV dealers deemed to be the best for outstanding customer service, operational innovation, charitable outreach, and just general excellence in overall business practices. You are the ones that make this program work, so please, when we contact you, take the time and send us your nominations so that we can celebrate those RV dealers who make our industry better. And the second announcement, about 15 minutes after his presentation is completed, economist Bernie Baumohl will be available right here in this room for an impromptu and more intimate Q&A session. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, and now, without further delay, let's begin the program. Our first guest is no stranger to the Power Breakfast, and we are fortunate to have him here again. A tireless public servant and the #1 cheerleader for the city of Elkhart, please join me in welcoming Elkhart Mayor Roberson to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here. These are not my notes, so I will not read them, all right? I am so excited to be here, and every year that I've been invited since the first, Greg Ford gave me a call and said, you know, the mayor of Elkhart should, in some way, welcome those that are here. And I wanted to make sure that I did it every year that I was invited, because we have a symbiotic relationship. Elkhart is a wonderful place. I mean, I was born and raised here, proud Roosevelt Rough Rider, Pomeranian Warrior, Elkhart Central Blazer. Yeah, I heard a little cry back there once, a Blazer. Nope, we're Lions now. I was proud of those things. And I went to Northwestern University a couple of years ago and was an All-American out of Elkhart in sports or in football and basketball, and I played football and basketball at Northwestern. It was all Big Ten. Got drafted in the NBA when the Nets were in New Jersey. And, but I always took Elkhart with me as a part of where I was from. I always spoke about it in a way that was endearing to people, because they always ask where you're from. And when I said Elkhart, Indiana, obviously they didn't know where it was, especially based on where I worked in. I worked for Coca-Cola for 15 years, and I was in multiple different places. But each time I would speak about Elkhart in a very loving and endearing way. And it was because of the way I was raised here and because of the things that we did. And the RV industry is branded in a certain way because of the things that you do. And that's why this symbiotic relationship exists. Elkhart is an innovative, entrepreneurial, wonderful business, has a wonderful business climate and environment. We foster it, and we look for ways to platform it on a regular basis. And with all of you in this room, you have made Elkhart a leader in so many different ways. Some may not know that Alka-Seltzer was created here. Some may not know that we definitely developed the expertise to make worldwide band instruments and lead that industry for many, many years. So from pharmaceuticals to band instruments to wonderful innovations in RVs and recreational vehicles, Elkhart plays a role in our national economic landscape like no other city our size. And so with that said, I couldn't be more proud to wear the brand Elkhart, Indiana, as I wore all of those other brands as I grew up. And so we thank you for what you do. We realize that not only are we the most resilient community, we are the type of community that anyone would want to live in and become a part of. And for all of you that are here that are not, all of you who are here that are not from Elkhart, let it be known that Elkhart is the place where if you haven't been from here and you're here now, you'll always remember it and you'll always want to come back. And that's the kind of environment that I'd like to foster as mayor, and I'd like to make sure that we all do it and be the kind of ambassadors for our community that I know you are for your industry. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for always allowing me to come up and say just a little something, something. I enjoy it, but I enjoy more these relationships that we build in order to make Elkhart the great place that it has become. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next, let's bring to the stage Camping World Holdings, Inc., Chairman and CEO Marcus Lemonis and Chief Operating Officer Matt Wagner. Representing Camping World, the nation's largest RV retailer with over 200 stores, and Good Sam, the world's largest RV owners organization, the two execs will field questions from Sherman Goldenberg, my former boss, and the senior editor of RVBusiness, and Bob Parrish, vice president of global accounts at Wells Fargo Distribution Finance and a former RVIA chairman. You can consider those two our Woodward and Bernstein. Please join me. Well, they're already here, so we'll skip the applause.
Thank you. Is it on? Oh, okay. All right. You ready? Yes, sir. Nice to see you. Marcus and I used to work for the same company, go back enough years. Affinity Group last. Yeah, in California. So, some questions about all these headlines that we've been seeing recently out of your, financials, a lot of them. What in your estimation is the state of Camping World, the world's largest RV dealer? What's the state of the company at this point?
Well, as you would expect, Sherm, I'm not going to answer that question directly.
Why would you start now?
Yeah. Before we get started, I had just a couple things that I wanted to share. This is I think my 23rd year in this industry. And it's been an unbelievable experience. I've spent half of my life, not as a business person, but half of my actual life in what I consider to be the greatest and most underappreciated industry that exists in our economy. And I am super grateful to all of you for taking a young kid out of the car business and allowing him to really make a life. For those of you that have been in this industry a long time, it has provided food for your families, educated your kids, allowed you to save money for your retirement, and have built not only a lot of wealth, but a lot of relationships. And I will tell you that this will definitely go down as the greatest experience of my life. And I've seen a lot of businesses, and I've been involved in a lot of things, and nothing will ever come close to what I've experienced here. I think as a group, we've all had these ups and downs, and we listen to economists and we listen to different people talk about all the trials and tribulations and the highs and the lows. But let this be really clear this morning. This industry is part of the fabric of the U.S. economy, but it's more importantly a part of the fabric of the U.S. culture. And that everybody in this room is contributing to a lifestyle that allows people to affordably, more affordably than any other industry that provides leisure, to enjoy this great country, to spend time with their families, and to do the things that we all want more of in our own life. Are we perfect? No. But we're pretty damn fucking good. Okay? And I hesitate usually to come into these kinds of environments. I think I'm probably still public enemy number one. But I am here to tell you that I am advocate for our industry number one. I believe wholeheartedly that we are at the precipice of something very big. I think the boat industry doesn't have it right. I think other forms of leisure have made it unaffordable for families in this country to enjoy this great country in a way that makes sense for them. But Matt and I were talking on the way over here about sort of my journey over the last 20-something years. And when I first came into this industry, it was fragmented. And to a certain degree, it still is. And it was, innocent in its approach to the consumer. And in a way, it still is. And the heart of what we do is really trying to make a good product to the best of our ability with the tools that we're provided, with a labor force that is exceptional, and a consumer that is loyal. But with all of those good things comes its challenges. And at Camping World, every other dealer, every manufacturer, every vendor, every supplier, we're still faced with the same challenges that we were 23 years ago when I got here. When I look back and sort of reflect on all the different meetings that I participated in, all the reports that have been written, the fact set of opportunities are the same. We need to make a better product. We need the consumer to have it be more affordable. We need to make the pain points of service and service wait times and where I'm going to store my unit and where I'm going to take my unit. Those challenges still remain. I don't know if they'll be there 20 years from now, but they still remain today. I think the one thing that I would encourage our group, this large group, to think about differently is, what are we going to do to finally make that move collectively to something bigger and brighter? We saw our ability to make 600,000 units, 600 and something thousand units at the peak of COVID. And it tested the limits of supply chains and repair and quality and all of the things that we all work hard to try to make better. But the one piece that I haven't heard that I'd like to hear more of, at least from our own organization and hopefully from yours, is how do we as an industry come together without any ego, without any sort of land grab, to get to 750,000 units? Because in that moment where we get to 750 or 1 million, all of our lives change. We're able to employ more people. We're able to contribute to the communities that our businesses operate in more effectively. But we're able to, more importantly, I think, grab market share from other industries that think they're as good as we are, but they're not. And I look at, over time, what are the blockers that prevent us from hitting these, what I don't consider very lofty goals, but from hitting these goals that we've never been at before. I think the shipment data in 2005 or 4, or whenever that was when I first started, 2003, is really no different. We have found these peaks and valleys, and we haven't really found a new peak that, quite frankly, I think we all have the infrastructure for. So I think, Sherman, when we talk about Camping World, which is fine, it's a dealership group that is a small participant in the overall ecosystem. We stand here today and really ask, respectfully, for us to put those other things away about our position and our brand and our market share and all these other things that are important, and really focus on how do we collectively create a better industry for the next generation of leaders. Those folks that are in your organization today that are just getting started. How do we attract new talent and new innovation and new ideas and make it sexy enough? Not just by flashing big dollars in front of them, but by flashing them an opportunity to have a career like I've had. There are very few places in the world where you can park yourself for multiple decades and have success, where you can build relationships with people that will be there for you in good times and bad times, unconnected to business, where you can celebrate all the innovations and success in a building like this and really feel good about it. So that, for me, Sherm, is the state of our business, which is really the state of our business. That's how I see it.
I think Bob's up next. I got one if he doesn't.
If you have a follow-up, take it.
Well, no, just go with the three.
Can you guys get your shit together?
Yeah, no. Well,
Go with the store count question.
yeah. Your optimism in your past statement was expressed on your quarterly call, on
Yeah.
your earnings call, and the targeting of 320 stores by 2028.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that continued investment and optimism and what that means for?
Yeah, I mean, look, we internally have a goal of getting to 320 stores, but our presupposition is that the industry as a whole grows proportionately to meet that demand. If we get to 320 stores and we have not solved as a group how to collectively fill that bucket, we're all just essentially adding fixed cost to the same fact set of revenue. The one thing that we can't ignore, and I appreciate the mayor coming here, is that we're dealing with a different cost structure than all of us have experienced in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Land's more expensive, building materials are more expensive, insurance is more expensive, labor costs are more expensive, and when we try to pass on those expenses so that we can maintain a level of profitability that works for everybody in the room, because that's the way we have to be healthy. Everybody has to make money, not just one group. I worry that we're not doing the things collectively to help grow that revenue at a pace that outpaces the cost of doing business. One of those things that I think regulates that a lot is the way we look at the finished good. And the finished good ultimately is going to determine the cost of the finished good, and the quality of the finished good is going to ultimately determine the trajectory of our business as an industry. That applies to us, to you, to every single person in this room, whether you sell a grab handle or whether you sell the final RV or the frame or whatever it may be. That's a challenge for us. And so our hope and aspiration to grow our business is largely predicated on the health of everybody in this room. I think 15 years ago, when I was dumber than I am today and had a little more piss and vinegar than I do today, it was really about like how much share could you grab and how many people could you buy and how much could you consolidate. And I think in hindsight, it was the wrong approach. And that was maybe my naivety or my immaturity that caused me to think that way, to be as aggressive as I was. And yes, we've built a $7 billion business and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I think I made a significant misstep in not being a greater advocate for the collective effort, and that how that collective effort could actually spill over into our personal gain. I think I missed that, and I'm trying to course correct, and hopefully the way we're approaching the market and the way we deal with people is helping course correct that, but I think we need that to layer over everybody. So our growth is really predicated on our growth.
One of the biggest headlines out of Camping World lately has to do with an expansion into single brand dealerships, something that's really caught the eye of the entire industry. What's up with that?
What do you mean, what's up with that? We'd like to sell more.
From our perspective, there's been such a development of the persona of the consumer that operates within this industry. And as Marcus alluded to earlier, we're really confronted with the same issues that we've been dealing with over the last 20 years. In fact, I pulled up an article early this morning, which I was just bantering with one of my teammates that have been in the industry for the last 3 decades, and it's literally the exact same hit list of items of dealing with different customer expectations, the same issues that we had 20 years ago with parts reordering time, different service issues, different expansion issues, higher interest rates at the time. And as we sit here and reflect, and we've reflected quite a bit over the last few years especially, we realize we just need to meet the customer in different ways, whomever that customer is that exists out there. The impetus behind the exclusive store concept was largely a byproduct of us acknowledging that there's a certain subset of customers that expect to be met with that high experience, high touch, yes experience. Where we know, for example, with some of the higher end products, those customers expect us to be specialists in whatever that component of their product is. So we've tasked our team with coming up with training curriculum so that we have highly specialized, sales associates as well as technicians that know how to simply just work on that one segment and category, and they should be the authority. Our goal is for us to largely continue to expand this so that we could meet that very specific persona. And that persona is very complementary to what we do already today at Camping World. We're able to a certain extent, hopefully satisfy that customer, but we're far more confident given the early results of what we've seen with these exclusive stores to actually satisfy and get that higher net promoter score so that we're able to retain these customers for the future. And that's where I would maintain that we need to continue to do a better job of actually creating those fans of customers across the board.
Whatever he said. For those of you that don't know Matt Wagner, you should get to know him. And I also wanted to use this opportunity to tell you that when we think about the growth of our industry, it's dependent on the growth of the talent that we have inside of the industry that may be untapped. And Matt and I have been working together since he was a senior in college. We went to the same university. And he has brought something, I think, not only to our business, but hopefully to yours, that is really driven on a different thought process. And when we think about the exclusive store concept, in addition to the specific metrics that he talked about, we also think it's important to bring new buyers to the audience, to the community that maybe are looking for a different experience. The buyers today, and Matt will talk a little bit more about it later, are younger than they've ever been. Like a significant amount, like over 20%, are less than 40 years old. That's stunning to me. And if it's people like Matt and other young people in your organization that can help each of us crack that code and take some of us old dogs who have bad habits and always say things like, well, this is how we do it here, I would strongly encourage you to arm your business with new and innovative, fresh talent, both in the way they think, both in gender, both in race, both in culture, both in beliefs, not because we feel like we have to check a box, right? But because we really just want to get better and we have that obligation to consumers.
Kind of looking at inventory, going back to Matt's comments, you guys announced a significant reduction in used inventory over the last 12 months and implemented an auction process. Can you talk a little bit more? I mean, it looked like it was a very successful thing to do, but could you talk a little bit more about that?
For those that have listened to our earnings calls or have heard me just pontificate at different times, they've heard me make the allusion that the used marketplace is actually double the size of the new marketplace. And as we sat there for a number of years suggesting how can we actually embed ourselves in that actual process to help enable a customer to more than likely satisfy that lower average sale price, because typically used is going to be a lower average sale price, we realized that the opportunity was massive. However, we had an inability at first, years ago, to actually procure used units. There's not a factory out there that actually makes used units. We felt like over the last few years we were very, very effective at the procurement channels, but then we ran into another issue over the last couple of years where we were able to enjoy what I would regard as meteoric rises in invoice prices on the new side. There's going to always be a connective tissue between new invoice prices and whatever the actual cost value is of used assets. Oftentimes, as a dealer, you could play upon that arbitrage that exists between the two segments. We were able to benefit by means of buying pretty heavily into the used marketplace when new prices were climbing rapidly. So from 2019 to 2022, in this industry, our invoice prices climbed almost 50%. We measure a general basket of goods that we call the RV price index, very similar methodology to the producer price index, where we'll take the same basket of goods and we've looked at for in excess of 2 decades now. That was the largest increase that this industry had ever seen in terms of new invoice prices. It was almost shocking, and that's where I started to ring all the alarm bells about a year and a half ago saying we need to do something to bend the curves of affordability so that we don't lose future generations of customers coming in. At the same time I was ringing that alarm bell, we just went out and started buying used. And once we were successful working with all of our partners out there, suppliers, manufacturers, and even working with other dealers to identify the right price points, we, for the first time in my history here, and I've been here for less time than many of you here, less time than Marcus, but this is the first time that I ever saw deflation in the new invoice price realm. And we were very effective at hitting certain price points in certain categories, where if I look at that same RV price index today, there's been about a reduction of 12 to 15% from the peaks about a year and a half ago. So we've all done our part to start to move the needle in the new invoice pricing. On the used side, though, we now realize that we need to be far more cautious because of the volatility that existed on the new side. And because of that volatility, we pulled back our used investment until we could just reassess the entirety of the land. We also realized that our remarketing channels needed to be fine-tuned, which Bob, you referenced the CW auctions concept. That represents for us an ability to build a more efficient marketplace. And what I mean by an efficient marketplace is providing consumers or participants in the used environment just more information more readily available and a quicker remarketing channel. In the used space, there's plenty of wholesalers, banks, manufacturers that need to offload either repossessions, buybacks, or simply just want an opportunity to buy into the used marketplace. Over the last 4 months, we've been able to launch 5 auctions. We've been very successful at selling to this broader base of consumers as well as wholesalers alike. We see this as an opportunity for us to have a water regulator on the backside of helping to regulate the used marketplace and allow us to continue to just help this entire industry just remain healthy from the used side of the business.
I think it's actually, I think it could even be simplified a little more than that. If you thought about a funnel, the same kind of funnel shape that you use to put oil in your car, and you turned it upside down where the point is facing north, and you looked at the stratas inside of that cone. So if that cone is upside down, at the top it's small, at the bottom it's big. That's kind of how I've thought about this industry overall. And if you look at our same-store sales numbers on the new side, year to date, I think we're up like 13 or 14%. Our market share, I believe, has crossed 30% in the month of March. That's not something that we feel good about, oddly enough. And our strategy to do that, both during COVID and after COVID, has been very simple. And this is the one thing that I think Matt and I have really approached the same way for 15 years. Consumers exist in the general economy at different price bands, whether it's home, whether it's their credit card payment, their car payment, whatever it may be. And the one thing that I feel like we brought to this industry very well in the last sort of kind of decade and a half is convincing consumers to buy on affordability. And affordability is really a function of the price, the rate, and the term. And when you look at that, you really have to always be able to be nimble. And so we've stayed very disciplined, and it's been a mandate of mine that inside of that cone, we always maintain a 99, 199, 299, 399, all the way up. I never think about it as terms of price. I think about it in terms of payment. That's how we advertise. That's how we stock inventory. That's how we train our salespeople. That's how we buy new inventory. And that truly and candidly, and Matt was a little softer about it, I made the decision in the middle of COVID where manufacturers were tight on supply and high on price to take matters into our own hands, and we took $500 million and just went out and bought used to make up for what we thought was the missing elasticity in the market. As the prices started to climb, and if you study the boat industry, and I would encourage you to do it, the boat industry has sequentially gone backwards. And it isn't because the quality of boats aren't good or because people don't like to be outside. It's because you've taken people out of the market. If you started with the most simple premise that you had to take a like-for-like unit and lower the BOM and lower the retail essentially at the same time, most people argue with me and say, you're just cutting my margin. But if you inverted it a little bit and said, how do we become more efficient? And how do we manufacture in a way that creates some level of consistency and scalability? A dollar here and a dollar there starts to matter. And the reason that we've had a more successful volume on the new side first quarter is because we essentially made a conscious decision to stock 50% of our inventory at less than $30,000. There's nothing that we're doing differently in terms of like, we're not better marketers and we're not better sales, but our sales process isn't better. In some cases, it's worse. But we really understand where that consumer sensitivity is, and we build our entire thesis around that. And when you see us do things with Coleman or any other sort of product, it's really our effort to take matters into our own hands to control the price pendulum that ultimately correlates to payment. If everybody in the room could adopt that thesis and figure out ways to take costs out of things and drive that price pendulum down, which ultimately, in a rate environment, drives that payment down, then we're going to win. And as rates start to come down again, which they're going to, we then have the ability to get some breathing room around price, breathing room around margin. I want to be clear before I wrap that up. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to make less gross profit. That's not what I'm advocating. We just need to understand that what we make today, at whatever segment it is, has to meet the demands of that cone. And when you go out of those bounds and you think consumers are going to go with you, you end up with negative year-over-year sales. And the boat industry is a good indicator of how to take something out. So if we wanted to breathe fire, which is kind of how I live my life, if we want to breathe fire, we pick two targets. We pick the boat industry and any other leisure industry, and we kick the shit out of them by understanding the elasticity model and nothing more. Because consumers are not going to stop recreating. They're just going to make a choice between us and something else. And you just have to win the buy box.
Marcus, they're tapping me on the shoulder, telling me I ought to go for the finale here. People want to know if you might have any more TV shows in the works. Given your popular role with The Prophet
Nobody's
on CNBC.
asking that, just you. Nobody's asking that. The answer is, I'll leave you with this fun fact. The one thing that I wanted to do in coming into this industry in 20 years, besides make a lot of noise, and for those of you that have not had a chance to have a relationship with me, I'm very different once you get to know me. Like, I'm a really different person than people think I am. True statement, right?
Very true.
Don Clark, are you here? Is that true, Don? Yeah, it's true. Even though you wouldn't sell me product, that's fine. I still love you. My goal through my journey, and I hope you guys feel like I did it, was to always weave our business and our industry into everything that I did. And it was really important to me to create awareness. And whether that was at the World Series or with NASCAR, yes, I had to promote our brand, but what we were really promoting was the industry. So the long answer to your short question is yes, I actually signed a contract with Fox Network, not Fox News, and I'll have a show starting again after the Super Bowl next year.
Excellent. Thank you both for coming here and for sharing your thoughts. Rick?
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Is it just me, Marcus, or should Sherman be your co-star in that show? All right. Thank you, Marcus and Matt. The next part of our program includes special presentations from two organizations, one national in scope and the other here in Elkhart, that have benefited greatly from the RV industry. They wanted a chance to thank us for our generosity and to show us the good work that our donations have funded. First up is Gwynn Sullivan, the Executive Director of the Care Camps Foundation, a not-for-profit organization that raises funds to support specialized oncology camps across the United States and Canada. Also, Care Camps is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Please join me in welcoming Gwynn Sullivan to the stage.
Rick, thank you so much for the gracious introduction. On behalf of Care Camps Foundation, we were very grateful to you and RVBusiness for all the support you provide us. So thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. It's really an honor to be here with you. Elkhart reminds me of where I grew up in Mount Airy, North Carolina, and where I spent time around a family-owned manufacturing company. Also, I started my career as a pediatric nurse, taking care of children with cancer. So the alchemy of this full circle moment being with you is very special for me and for Care Camps Foundation. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, Care Camps Foundation is a national nonprofit foundation whose sole purpose is to fundraise to fund pediatric oncology camps across the United States and Canada, so children living with cancer and their families can attend these camps at no cost. This past year, we provided $2 million to 122 camps that touched the lives of over 41,000 children and family members. What's truly amazing is how Care Camps Foundation began 40 years ago. It was started by a few KOA campground owners who came together to launch a charitable giving cause to fund pediatric oncology camps. Because of those bold individuals, a spark took hold, and the KOA industry has continued to be our bedrock of support in all kinds of wonderful ways. I especially want to thank Toby O'Rourke for continuing to carry that flame. Then another spark got lit with you, the RV industry, when Care Camps became its own standing nonprofit 10 years ago. There were several special individuals, including Sherman Goldenberg, who began knocking at your doors on our behalf, and many of you graciously invited us in. It was you that elevated our mission to new heights and made it possible for us to provide more funding to the camps we serve. Since we began partnering together, the RV industry as a whole, including many companies and individuals in this room, have generously donated over $4 million. We are so grateful to you as an industry for embracing our mission and galvanizing together to bring joy, hope, and the healing power of the outdoors to children and families who are encapsulated in a cancer journey. And there's so much more we can do together. I and our team look forward to getting to know more of you, and we are excited about the many possibilities ahead. In closing, I want to let Derek and Lacey have the last word so you can hear firsthand from parents of a child with cancer and who got to experience the magic at one of the camps we fund, how much your giving truly gives. Thank you so much.
Our daughter, Adeline, was diagnosed at 2 years old.
She was diagnosed with extrarenal malignant rhabdoid tumor in her chest.
They got to Billings and they did
We did a CT scan, and the doctor walks in, and you can just read it all over her face. And
she said it's not pneumonia.
it's a tumor.
Before they had even come in to tell us, they had already called Children's Hospital in Colorado and had the jet on the way up.
She's in front of me, and I'm way back here in the jet. So that distance between my baby and I, even though it was 10 feet, was so painful for me because she was so far away, and I just knew in the core of my being, I knew there was something really wrong. I mean, she spent 2 weeks once on life support. We literally sat there and had to say goodbye to her.
There's no way that you could just pinpoint one thing about what was so difficult about it, and it was that way for a year and a half.
Yeah. I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is that after cancer treatment it ends, and it's just not true. It's the aftermath of cancer that is the most challenging, that families need most, which is why camps like this are everything.
When you go through a fight like this, it changes you, but there's something special about being here with your peers.
It is one of the most beautiful gifts to see these bright, vibrant, beautiful young adults and teenagers who have battled cancer, because it gives me hope.
When you fight cancer, there's not a lot to look forward to, but these camps are one thing that you can look forward to every year. it's a shining bright spot for us every summer to get to come up here for a week and hang out.
I'm so thankful that there are people that give because it lightens and brightens their soul. You know, I'm so thankful because a lot of us couldn't do this without them. And so we would just continue to be isolated and alone, and people were what gave me hope. Thank you for that part of you who just wants to give. We need it so badly.
And be free of everything.
Free of the burdens that cancer and like post-cancer brings. Like they just get to play and be kids and receive love, and that is pretty magical.
Yep.
That was powerful. Thank you, Gwynn. Next up is Pete McCown, who since 2011 has served as the president of the Community Foundation of Elkhart County. The Community Foundation is nationally renowned for its support of nonprofits and various endeavors that improve the health of the Elkhart community, businesses, and its people. Please join me in welcoming Pete McCown to the stage.
Good morning. It's good to be with you. I want to thank the Power Breakfast Planning Committee for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. The last time I had this opportunity was a couple years ago. Some of you have observed that I'm slightly overdressed for the RV Power Breakfast, and I acknowledge that to be true. But as I reflected the last couple weeks on what I might share with you for a few moments, I was reminded of one of your role models, RV executive who has passed but lived a remarkable life as an example to all of us around loving people, loving God, and loving his community, and giving in lavish and generous ways. So I put on one of my Hermes ties that Mr. DCO had given to me over Christmas, year after year after year. And if you're not fortunate enough to have had the privilege of knowing Art, find somebody who did and ask them about him. You are Elkhart County's most important industry. We celebrate the growth and success of your industry over the last 50 years, despite a couple of sluggish years. We acknowledge and thank you for your involvement in our community as employers, community leaders, volunteers, and donors to the important network of charitable organizations in Elkhart County. This is a time of renaissance in Elkhart, led by your industry, and the prosperity we all enjoy because of your innovation and hard work. From our vantage point at the Community Foundation, we are seeing a new wave of philanthropy and community investments. Over the last few years, as you've been building RVs, I thought you might be interested in a few highlights of what your Community Foundation has been investing in, the most obvious of which is the construction of the Elkhart Health and Aquatic Center and the surrounding River District development. I know he's not here, but I want to take a moment to acknowledge Pete and Sharon Legal for having made this facility in Elkhart County possible. And I also want to acknowledge Bob Thor's investment alongside Forest River and the Legal family, Patrick Industries, Lipper Components, Dometic. We raised $30 million in addition to the $10 million and the $15 million and the $5 million that Elkhart Community Schools and the Community Foundation and Beacon Health System contributed. But this $70 million facility hosts 600,000 people a year. It has almost 7,000 members. It has 50,000 people a month who visit the facility, and it generates 40,000 hotel room visits a year in Elkhart County from people who come from all over the country. And as a highlight to this, I want to share with you that just last weekend, USA Swimming hosted their 18 and under national championships in our facility. So there were young high school age kids that came from literally San Diego to Boston, Massachusetts, and Atlanta, Georgia to compete in our pool. And 15 of those kids, when they came out of the water after their event, qualified to compete in the Olympic trials. I mean, this is what did you say, Marcus? This is a kick-ass fast pool, one of the fastest pools in the world. So thank you to this industry for making that asset possible in our community. In addition, we have made significant investments in the creation of Junior Achievements BizTown Experiential Learning Facility. We recently opened the Tolson Center for Community Excellence, and I want to thank Bill and Kristen Fennick for having made the lead gift to make that facility possible. We've implemented Manufacturing Day, a field trip experience where every 8th grader in Elkhart County has the opportunity to visit and tour a manufacturing facility, many of them yours, and learn about various careers within the manufacturing industry. We just opened the Lifeline Hub, a 40,000 square foot facility serving kids in South Central Elkhart. I want to thank Tom Irons and ASA Electronics, the Moore brothers at Moorride, and Ron and Lisa Fennick for their lead gifts to make that facility possible. We've been a part of the expansion of the 4 Boys and Girls Club facilities in Goshen, Middlebury, Elkhart, and Napanee, to the credit of Brian and Janelle Brady, Jim Shea and his family, and the Bontrager family for their investments in some of those respective clubs. We opened the Mittler Engineering and Technology and Innovation Center at the Elkhart Area Career Center and made a lead gift and brokered a lead gift from Charlotte Mittler and her family. We were part of the addition of the patient tower at Goshen Hospital. Special thanks to Don and Teresa Gundon and the Bontrager family again for their lead gifts to that project. My thanks to Andy and Charlie Rader and Scott Tuttle and Todd Cleveland for helping create Doc's Pavilion in Wakarusa. And the creation of Stable Grounds, a therapeutic equine facility serving kids in Middlebury, and soon a permanent visitor center at the Wellfield Botanic Gardens, all led by generosity from your industry. And that's just a short list of the hundreds of programs and projects your community foundation has invested in the last few years. At the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, we work to connect these projects to philanthropists, many of whom are in this room. Due to your generosity, the Community Foundation of Elkhart County has become one of the largest and fastest growing community foundations in the world. I also want to thank Claude Donati and the Nexus team for adopting Safe Haven Women's Shelter, both as volunteers and donors. I want to thank Jason Lippert and the Lippert team for demonstrating that it's not all just about your checkbook, and for leading the way in demonstrating that we can give of our time and our talent as well as our treasure with the hundreds of thousands of hours that the Lippert team has contributed as volunteers in this community. Our community relies on each of you. If you're newer to this industry, we invite you to join the others of the RV industry and get involved in the great organizations that serve kids and families. We all live here. We have families and neighbors, and we have a responsibility together to make this community all that it can be. I and my colleagues at the Community Foundation feel a deep sense of responsibility to help guide the future growth and development of our community. And you are a critical part of what we are trying to accomplish together. I pray Elkhart County will always be known as the RV capital of the world, and that's because of you. We're thankful that you are here, and we're thankful for your generosity to our community.
Thank you, Pete. Joining us from Washington, D.C. via video, our next guest is Congressman Rudy Yakym, who represents Indiana's 2nd Congressional District. Born and raised in South Bend, Congressman Yakym is a member of the House Committee on Budget and the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Also, and perhaps more importantly to us, he's the co-chair of the RV Caucus. Congressman Yakym, in that role, is a fervent supporter of matters of particular importance to the RV industry. Please join me in listening to Congressman Yakym.
Hey Hoosiers, Congressman Rudy Yakym here. I wish I was back in Elkhart with you this morning, the RV capital of the world. However, I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to thank all of you for the incredible work you're doing for this great industry, and an industry that is so important to our region. In Congress, I'm proud to continue Jackie Walorski's legacy of being a champion of all things RV. One way that I'm doing that is by co-chairing the Congressional RV Caucus, so that your interests are represented and advanced here in our nation's capital. Another initiative I'm leading is common sense bipartisan legislation called the Travel, Trailer, and Camper Tax Parity Act. As many of you know, a mistake in the 2017 tax law means non-motorized towable RVs aren't eligible for the same exemption of floor plan financing from interest deductibility that a towable RV is. That means RV dealers have to maintain 2 separate sets of books, one for motorized and the other for non-motorized RVs. Not only is it unfair, it's also costing RV dealerships millions of dollars per year. My bill fixes this technical error, allowing dealers to focus less on paperwork and more on selling RVs to Americans looking to explore the great outdoors and our nation's vast natural beauty. As I go to bat for legislation and other priorities in Congress, it's heartening to know that there are so many of you doing the same thing back home. So keep up all your dedicated hard work. I hope you have a great breakfast, and I look forward to visiting with so many of you soon.
Thank you, Congressman Yakym. If you've been following along in your program, you know that our final presentation before we go to our intermission break was going to be with Bob Tiffin, Van Tiffin, and Lee Tiffin, who were going to talk about their company's legendary culture of customer service. Unfortunately, due to their flights being canceled, they were unable to join us this morning. So we've made a slight adjustment to our program, and next up now will be the RV Dealers Association, which is the national association representing the interests of RV dealers, rental companies, and the RV aftermarket stores. Representing RVDA is Board Chairman Ryan Horsey, who is the Vice President of Fixed Operations at Parkview RV Center in Smyrna, Delaware, and Phil Ingrassia, who has been with RVDA for 28 years and its president since 2012. Please join me in welcoming Ryan and Phil to the stage.
Thanks, Rick, and good morning, everyone. I would just want to thank Rick and the entire RV business team for putting on this great event. It's another great success, Rick. Thank you very much. You know, I want everyone in the room to know that your work here in Elkhart and the surrounding communities directly impacts more than 2,900 RV dealers across the country who together employ about 54,000 people with an annual payroll of $4.1 billion. So what you're doing here in Elkhart County and the surrounding communities really impacts a lot of RV dealership folks. RVDA released a survey of its members this spring, and the vast majority of RV dealers are very, very optimistic about the future of the business. They're confident that the industry has built up a larger installed base through the pandemic and can really, really build on that installed base, bring in repeat buyers, new buyers, and grow the business as Marcus was talking about. As noted in RVBusiness almost every month, RV dealers are investing millions of dollars in new facilities, service bays to support our growing customer base. You know, after an extended destocking process last year, we really do feel that we have a runway for success moving forward. These surveys also indicate, and again, as Marcus talked about, that financing availability for the customer is good, and dealers are working very diligently with their lenders to make sure that there are payment options available to keep the affordability factor in play for our customers. You know, as RVDA works with our partners at RVIA, there are some public policy challenges ahead. RVDA helped dealers score a victory late last year when dealers were expressly exempted from the FTC's CARS rule, which would have really put some unnecessary regulatory burden on the sales process and put in some regulatory record-keeping requirements that really would have cost dealers a lot of money. The car business is fighting these rules in court, and it's something that we're very pleased to have RV dealers exempted from. And as Congressman Yakym in the video talked about, we're also working on that Travel, Trailer, and Camper Tax Deductibility Act. It's important that we get this fixed, and you're going to be hearing more about that in the coming months as Congress gets back into session and works on the 2017 tax cut extensions. And that's going to be our vehicle to hopefully get this thing fixed for good. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Horsey, my chairman of the board, and he's got a few words for you as well.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to be here this morning, especially Marcus and Matt. Thank you very much for those kind words on behalf of the dealers. You guys are inspiration for not only bigger conglomerates, but also for smaller dealers like us in Delaware. 2 days ago, some of the members of RVDA and RVIA were able to go ahead and get together in Washington, D.C. for the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable Executive Forum. One of the most impactful things that we heard the entire time was people love to camp, they love the outdoors, and the other thing, as a parent, how to go ahead and get the kids off the electronics. A couple years ago, 2020 Memorial Day weekend, I had the opportunity to satisfy an adventure of a lifetime, which was through scuba diving. But it was something that allowed us to go ahead and take an outdoor adventure and bring it into the RV world, where we were able to go ahead and camp. And being underneath the water, you're able to go ahead and take an adventure with your kids to see different things that you're not used to being able to see. But the biggest part was after all was said and done, we were able to go ahead and sit around a campfire that in most campgrounds was not smiled upon. It was literally probably about 10 feet tall and probably about 20 feet wide. But the most amazing part was the experience I was able to go ahead and share with my kids. It was the things that we were able to go ahead and tie together as far as the impact of recreational vehicles, being able to camp and just enjoy that experience that's going to go ahead and just shape the mold for our family for years to come. And I can't thank you manufacturers enough for allowing that to make it happen, and also campgrounds. It's memories like this that go ahead and fuel my ambition to make sure things on the fixed operations side of the RV dealers are being catapulted to the future. It's little things like this that allow our industry's initiative for repair event cycle time, or as we know as RECT, be more transparent. But the most important thing about that is to make sure that it's not just an industry initiative, it's a behavior. And that thing about the behaviors, as you're sitting here talking about how do we go ahead and lower cycle times for recreational vehicles being inside a service lot, or how do we go ahead and take a part of making sure that we're able to identify different parts that may have more opportunities than others. It's ideas like that allow our DMS systems to come together and to identify those. And as we go ahead and go forward with the industry initiative, I pray that it's more of a behavior rather than something that's just talked about. My term for RVDA chairman is only 1 year. So as we go ahead and go forward, I pray that it's something that we keep at the forefront of everything else. And as from a small dealer to some of the biggest manufacturers in the industry, which majority should be inside this room, I thank you so much for allowing us to go ahead and act as that liaison between our customers and yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan and Phil. The RV Industry Association is our national trade group representing the manufacturers and component suppliers and others producing approximately 98% of all RVs manufactured in North America. Representing RVIA is Craig Kirby, who has been the association's president and CEO since 2019. A 25-year veteran at RVIA, Craig previously had served as Senior Vice President of Government Relations and General Counsel. Please join me in welcoming Craig Kirby to the stage.
Thanks, Rick. It is great to be here. I have to correct one thing, because I'm gonna talk about this. It's actually 30 years now, not 25. How those things happen, I don't know. But good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here. Having all industry segments represented here today truly makes this a special event. Before I get started, I got to say, wow, what great opening comments by Marcus. Very powerful, and he said it so well, and he actually laid the groundwork for my main message here today, so I want to thank him for that. So, as I mentioned recently, I celebrated 30 years in the industry, and it got me thinking about what I'd learned over those years. And I've learned so much from all of you and from the RVIA team. But in the big picture, the one thing that stands out is how important it is for us to work together as an industry. When industry unity came up when I was younger, I just didn't comprehend its impact. Today, I have a much better understanding on how it can transform an industry. Industry unity has brought us Go RVing and RVTI and many, many successes on Capitol Hill. But our industry is really made up of three segments. Manufacturers and suppliers being one, dealers being two, and campgrounds being the third. If any of these segments fail the RVer, we all suffer. Unity between manufacturers and dealers has never been stronger, but our relationship with the campground segment has not been quite as close. That is changing for the positive. The Emerging Leaders Coalition and the newly formed Campground Coalition are made up of leaders from all segments of the industry, manufacturers, dealers, suppliers, campgrounds, and aftermarket. They are developing across-industry relationships that are bringing us all closer together. And our closer relationships across the industry are already paying dividends in how the RVIA Government Affairs team is coordinating federal and state legislative contacts from entities within each segment, from private equity firms to dealer networks to campground operators. This strengthens our lobbying power and our ability to achieve our legislative and regulatory goals. And we are now sharing our collective market research and data to help each segment take the customer experience to the next level, to set us apart from competing industries. But this is only the tip of the iceberg of what we can accomplish. When I look out in this audience, I see so much talent, and more importantly, such passion for the RV industry. I know everyone's focused on their lane, as you should be, but I challenge everyone here today to look outside your lane to see how we can work closer together to break down industry barriers to growth and bring RVers the experience they deserve. Just imagine if we could harness all the energy in this room. Please reach out to me or any member of the RVIA team with ideas or a desire to get involved. RVIA has over 30 committees that span so many different areas that impact your business. Another opportunity to get involved is through attending RVs Move America Week, the first week of June in DC, or the Leadership Conference, which takes place the first week in March. Now for a few highlights of your association's activities. Recently, we conducted a survey of members, and the most valued service was our standards inspection program and the development of industry standards. Having walked through plants with our inspectors, it's easy to see why. They are a dedicated team and a great education resource for the industry. In fact, RVI's standards department now offers regulatory compliance workshops at manufacturing facilities. Recently, training was held at a manufacturer where 50+ quality control auditors, line supervisors, engineers, and managers attended. The training was well received, and the compliance manager said, "The workshop will reap benefits by raising awareness of how product compliance intersects everyone's roles." The standards department is now taking the next step and is in the process of developing an online training program for members that covers critical areas in fire and life safety standards. Please reach out to our standards team if you would like to schedule a workshop. Go RVing's messaging continues to resonate with today's consumer, and as a result, today's new RV buyer is younger and more diverse than ever. In addition to their traditional marketing work, last month, Go RVing took advantage of the solar eclipse with a little April Fool's Day prank. Our survey showed over 14.1 million RVers intended to go camping to see the solar eclipse, and we wanted to keep RVs in the media. In a move to complement their traditional marketing, they created the RV Clips. Take a look at this video.
On April 8th, see the total solar eclipse like never before. Introducing the RV Clips solar glasses. Oh yeah, they're giant eclipse glasses made for your RV. Don't miss your chance to stare directly at the sun from the comfort of your recreational vehicle. Get yours now at GoRVing.com. I can't believe we have to say this, but never look directly at the sun without ISO 12312-2 compliance safety lenses.
So it was a real fun way to take advantage of the eclipse, and you would be surprised how many people actually fell for it. The video generated a ton of engagement across Instagram and Facebook. Our government affairs team has been hard at work as well. Recently, the RVI team, working with the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, helped to get the Explore Act passed through the House. The Explore Act is the first of its kind comprehensive recreation package which will improve visitor experience, create rural jobs, and increase access to federal public lands. The legislation will extend federal land shoulder seasons to spread out demand and create more RV camping opportunities. It will also bring broadband to front country campgrounds and establish partnership agreements, such as agreements with private operators to manage public campgrounds, all to improve the RV camping experience. The legislation will provide technical and financial assistance for outdoor recreation businesses, such as private campgrounds and gateway communities. Our research shows there are over 11 million RV-owning households, and there are only 1.7 million RV campsites in the entire U.S. These type of investments are enormously important for the growth of the industry, and quite an accomplishment that this bill received bipartisan support in the House. Also, we are making progress on the Hill with the Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP Reform Act, which made it out of committee. This legislation impacts Luan Wood, and if passed, it could save the industry $12 to $18 million annually. Additionally, RVI's government affairs team continues to make progress working with RVDA and our dealer partners at the state level with the passage of RV-specific legislation in Maryland, Washington, and Wisconsin. This legislation matters because oftentimes we're in the automotive franchise laws, and the RV-specific franchise laws more accurately reflect the relationship between RV manufacturers and RV dealers. On the RV Technical Institute front, the industry's investment is paying dividends as RVTI has made great strides in training techs and attracting new ones to our industry. In the past 2 years, the Institute has recruited over 2,200 new RV techs into the field, and there are currently 17,000 individuals enrolled in some type of technician training. RVTI has also increased the number of certified RV techs to over 5,800 and now has over 900 dealership and authorized learning partners across the country. RVTI has firmly established itself as the gold standard in RV technician training. Now, one might think RVTI curriculum is only appropriate for current or prospective technicians, but in fact it's being used by campgrounds to train personnel to help stranded RVers, and by manufacturers and suppliers to train factory workers, call center operators, and warranty administrators. Please reach out to RVTI to see how they can help your business. Thank you for your ongoing support of the RV Industry Association. I do have one last item to cover. For this segment, I would like Kevin McCart, RVI's chair, to please join me on stage. Typically, RVIA presents its industry awards during RV's Move America Week. But on this day and during the Power Breakfast, we thought it would be fitting to honor someone we all know well and who is one of the masterminds of this terrific event. The Distinguished Service to the Industry is the association's highest honor and is presented to an individual within the RV industry who has set himself or herself apart through their outstanding service to the industry. I think we can all agree that Sherman Goldenberg is such a person. Recently, Sherman, or Goldenberg, as he likes to call himself, stepped back from his publisher role at RVBusiness, but for generations he committed himself to being a true champion for all of us in this room and to making all of us better competitors and better partners. I would like to welcome Sherman to the stage and to honor him with RVIA's Distinguished Service to the RV Industry Award.
Hello. I found out about this a couple of days ago. Was going to put together some, incisive comments, but I think I'm just going to say thank you earnestly for those kind words and for the recognition. And I'm reminded, looking across this room, of what a relational business this is. We always hear it. It's one of the first things they told me in early 1980s when I was entering the industry, and it is. And so with that, enjoy your break.
We'll take a 12-minute break. Bathrooms are located in the back of the room, but also the bathrooms in the hallway and up in the museum area also will be open. See you in 12 minutes.
Did I do
Good
okay?
job, Craig. Yeah, you did fine. Awesome.
Yeah, I was done.
Yeah, you had us off the break.
Yeah, I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are so happy that you're able to renew friendships and have these wonderful conversations. That's part of what we are doing here with the Power Breakfast. But we need to resume. So please find your seats, wrap up your conversations, and find your seats, and we'll get started here in about a minute and a half.
If we could have everyone retake their seats, please. Please take your seats. Welcome back, everyone. Please take your seats. During the intermission, I just had a chance to talk with Coach Shrewsberry. I offered my services. In 6th grade, I was the 4th boy off the bench, which led to my career in wrestling. Like Congressman Yakym, our next speaker, Coach Micah Shrewsberry, also comes to us from just down the road in South Bend. An Indianapolis native, Shrewsberry coach just completed his first year as the men's basketball coach at the University of Notre Dame. Prior to joining the Fighting Irish, Coach orchestrated a historic turnaround as the head coach at Penn State. Beyond that, Coach Shrewsberry has coached in 6 NCAA tournaments, 2 NCAA Final Fours, 5 NBA playoffs, and 2 NBA Conference Finals. Please join me in welcoming Coach Micah Shrewsberry.
Sorry, I had to tell Rick on the way off the stage that if I needed his services on our team, I will also be joining the RV industry soon. Send applications my way if you see Rick playing for us at any point in time. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm fortunate and blessed to be here, but it's also humbling when BJ showed me. He accidentally showed me the list of people that he asked to come first, and it was like Marcus Freeman, X, no, he can't be here. Neil Ivey, no. Kevin Corrigan, they're playing in the national championship here coming up soon. It was like anyone else from Notre Dame. Can't do it. I was like, well, ask the dude that coaches basketball. And it was like, okay, yeah, he can do it. So I'm happy to be here, and this is such a great event, and listen to everybody has been cool for me. I don't want to bore you to death, so I'm going to get moving and talking about a few things. What I wanted to really talk about was really my journey through coaching and some of the lessons I've learned along the way. And this is truly a full circle moment for me because every time I get up here and I get introduced, they say that I'm the head men's basketball coach at the University of Notre Dame. And as a kid who grew up in Indiana, never in my wildest dreams would I think that would be possible. Never in my wildest dreams would I think that would be possible in 2005 when I was the head coach at IU South Bend. And that's kind of where my journey started. I had coached a few years before and kind of worked my way up to that point. And I was crazy enough to think when I graduated college that I wanted to be a head coach at the age of 30. And I got the job at IU South Bend when I was 30 years old. But my path really began with failure. I coached there for 2 years, and we were wildly unsuccessful. You rush to get to a certain point, you rush to make a goal, you rush to get somewhere, and then you're not fully prepared for what that is or what that opportunity presents for itself. So I failed, right? I'm not afraid to say it. But winning 3 games in 1 year, winning 15 games in 2 years at IU South Bend, it's not like Notre Dame was looking down the street like, that dude's going to be our next head coach. But there were some life lessons kind of along the way that I picked up throughout this journey. And, like I said, it started with failure. But I got a lifeline within that, right? I didn't run from the responsibilities of turning that program around at IU South Bend, which we had started to do. But I got an opportunity to go with a lifelong friend of Brad Stevens and join his staff at Butler. But I had to take steps backwards to go forward. And I think that's that first lesson is going backwards. So I was a head coach at IU South Bend. I went to Butler as a director of basketball operations, a non-coaching role. I was getting the buses ready and figuring out our travel plans. I was sending us for shoot-around times. I was getting guys class schedules. Everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, I was not doing anymore. But to get to where I wanted to be, I had to take a step back. And to this day, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget going back to that role. I still keep, in my wallet, I still keep a Blockbuster card. I know Blockbuster is no longer with us, but I still do it just so I remember what it was like doing that again. and what it was like in that role, and you never forget your beginnings, and you never forget where you started. Fortunate enough, I just focused on doing that, and I moved. After 1 year, I got a chance to move up to an assistant coach, and we had an unbelievable run to a couple of Final Fours, and everything really moved from there. We had a lot of success. I moved to Purdue, was with Coach Painter for a couple of years, and then after 2 years, Coach Stevens gets a job with the Boston Celtics, and he asked me to come with him. So lesson number 2 in my career journey was forget everything you learned. Because I went from college to the NBA, and I felt like a complete idiot. You don't know what you don't know. And I'd been coaching for a long time, and I thought I knew a lot, and I thought I was in a really good place. And I got to the NBA, and it was foreign language taught in foreign language. It was like I was learning French in Spanish, and I had no idea what was happening. So everything I thought I knew as a basketball coach, I had to start over again. I had to learn to listen. I had to learn to watch. I had to learn from everybody. I learned more things from the players than I did other coaches. And you had to really humble yourself and go back a little bit and forget what I thought I knew was basketball and relearn it in a different way. So that really taught me a lot of things there. I was there for 6 years, but my ultimate goal was to be a college basketball coach, right? Something that I had failed at earlier. So I was getting anxious to go back. I was getting anxious to get back to college, and we were having a lot of success, and I was fulfilling my role, but I was anxious to be a head coach again. Lesson 3 was always believe in yourself, because when it was time for me to come back to college, it was like college didn't want me. I interviewed for multiple head coaching jobs at all kinds of places, right? And I'm like, yeah, this is surefire. I was a college coach. We had a lot of success in college. Now I'm in the NBA. We've been in the playoffs. We've coached an NBA All-Star game. We've had all kinds of success. Sure, I'll get these jobs. UMass, right there in the neck of the woods in Boston. No, sorry. Rhode Island, no thanks. All right, let's try some other jobs. No. It's hard to believe in yourself continuously when people tell you you're not good enough, right? And that's what they were telling me at that point in time was you're not good enough. So you continue to believe, you continue to keep the faith, you continue to stay on that journey and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. For me, once again, I had to take a step back, and I went back to college as an assistant coach with Coach Painter at Purdue, and we had a lot of success, and what it led to was me getting a job in the same conference. So I went from an assistant coach at Purdue to a head coach at Penn State, which is pretty unheard of, but that belief and sticking with it and staying with kind of the belief in myself and trusting others really helped me in that stage, which kind of leads to the last part of it is stick to the plan. Stick to the plan, even when it looks bleak, even when it looks like, you've done everything possible and you don't know what's next. You just stay with it. I got to Penn State, and it's not like it was a super historic program. I'm sorry if anybody here went to Penn State or Penn State basketball fans. If there is, it probably isn't, because if there are any Penn State basketball fans in here, you guys have probably thrown something at me a long time ago. But it was a program that we believed in what we could do, and I had to stick to a plan. I had to have a plan when I got there of how we could turn it around and be really successful. And we stuck to that plan, and we did it. Went from 14-17 in year 1 to 23-14 in NCAA tournament berth in year 2. And I decided to come back home, right? The full circle's now complete. To leave IU South Bend and now come to Notre Dame. And now that full circle is, what I thought was not going to happen through failure is now happening. And same thing. Now I have to stick to a plan here, no matter what it looks like. I got here last spring, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and I walked in, and we had 3 players on our team, right? I was really close to calling Rick and having him come over and join us. That's where it was last year when I got here. But having 3 guys on your team, but also having a plan for how do you have success? And then how do you sustain success? And you have to stick to this plan of how you build it, how you do things, how you grow. And even when there are things going by that are flashier, you got to turn your eyes from that and stick to the plan and just keep your head down and keep moving and keep pressing on. So we had a really young team, right? That, like, you have to find out how you can build it. Like, what the industry says is the best way to be successful at the place that you're in, right? I can't look at how Indiana's doing it. I can't look at how Kansas is doing it. I have to do it in the way that fits Notre Dame. So this is my plan for how to make us really successful. And no matter what anybody says, I can't listen to it. I can't veer off of this plan. Like, I got to see it all the way through. And that's what we're doing. I'm having a blast every single day. I've learned to have thick skin and like I said, not listen to what other people say is the best way for me to run our program, or the best way for us to operate in this college basketball world that's crazy right now. I just have to keep my head down and stick to this plan. So my full circle moment is almost complete. It'll be complete once I get the Fighting Irish back to the NCAA tournament, which will be really, really soon. And when I do that, I hope that you guys remember that this crazy coach that was up here at the RV Industry Power Breakfast, he stuck to his plan, he stuck to his guns, and he's having a lot of success, and he's having a lot of fun. You guys have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Coach Shrewsberry. Our next presentation is from Toby O'Rourke, President and CEO of Campgrounds of America, KOA, and her comments are always one of the highlights of our Power Breakfast. As she comes to the stage, KOA is the world's largest branded system of campgrounds with over 500 franchised and company-owned locations across North America. The company also owns Terramore Outdoor Resorts, a glamping venture with a flagship property in Maine, and KOA is the go-to source for industry research, publishing the North American Camping Report annually as well as monthly data. Please join me in welcoming Toby O'Rourke.
Good morning. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for inviting me. It's always nice to be here to speak at the Power Breakfast. Last year when I was here, we had a lot of conversation about how we all share the customer, which has definitely been a theme of the morning so far, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And we all play a role in attracting and retaining that customer. It's been really great over the past year to have many really inspiring conversations with several companies that are here today about how we can collectively look at the customer journey and improve those points of friction for our customers. So thank you for that. When I was trying to decide what to talk about this year to build off of that, I was given the feedback that it's always really nice to know what we're learning in our research that can help inform product design or experience design. And as you know, KOA is definitely a data-driven organization. We've actually brought on data scientists this year and business intelligence experts that are helping us really get into the details on our own customers and how we can learn from that and what they want. And we've also been investing in customer research for 20 years. And just yesterday, we released our 10th annual version of our outdoor hospitality research report. Because we can't stop doing research, we're actually expanding it this year to 10 micro reports that will be released every couple of weeks so we can go deeper on specific topics. So more to come. The first one was just released yesterday. It's been really nice having data over 10 years because it allows us to look at trends over time. And we can get really caught up in what's happening today and right now in our business and not really step back and appreciate how far this industry has come. Now, the pandemic definitely catapulted interest in the outdoors, but even coming into 2020, we were measuring year-over-year increases in all of these categories. More camping households coming out to camp, Increase in frequency, people camping multiple times per year. Higher diversity, younger demographics, sizable increase in RV households. Also, in this time period that we've been measuring research, the sharing economy emerged, and that now accounts for 13% of RV usage. All in all, I see these past 10 years as outdoor hospitality, camping, RVing, really solidifying our place in travel. 1 out of every 3 leisure trips last year involved camping. So I think this is quite phenomenal, and I think we should all congratulate ourselves with how far this industry has come. I think it's quite phenomenal. And it's good to look back, but I know you're like, okay. Since the pandemic, things have been tough, right? We're in a unique environment right now. We want to know what's happening now with the camper. So I pulled forward a few things I thought would be of interest this morning to talk about. First of which is camper engagement is increasing. I think the camper we have now is more satisfied and more engaged and more likely to continue camping than they have been over the past few years. We define at-risk campers as those who aren't sure if they're going to continue to do this activity, and that declined from 45% to 28%. That's a sharp decline in that at-risk camper group. This is great. Again, as we make that customer journey as seamless as possible, we will continue to retain people in the activity. When we asked new RVers about their first camping trip, 54% said it was great. Last year, that was like 24%. Huge increase in experience. I think we are tackling those points of friction, and we're doing a really good job there. The next thing I would like to talk about, and I'm excited about, is that the boomers are back, and they're back in a big way. So after several years of the pandemic, likely staying home because of health concerns about traveling, we're seeing them come back out and camp. Of all campers last year, all camping households, 26% were from the boomer generation, a 19-point increase, 19 points. But what I also am just blown away by, and I've never seen this before, is of the new camper base, people that camped for the first time last year, 22% were boomers. We have put a lot of attention, rightly so, on the younger demographics. We were talking about that a bit this morning. They are important, it's sizable. That said, we have to shift some attention back to this very important segment that has always driven this business. The next thing I'd love to share that many of you may not know is campgrounds have capacity. There has been a lot of chatter and talk and media attention over the past couple years that campgrounds are full. And I think that dialogue actually discourages people from trying to make reservations at private campgrounds. I was really pleased to see in our research that only 16% of campers say they experienced overcrowding last year. That's positive. Those numbers are coming way down. And KOA, I've got my franchise partners here today, we were just talking about this. We're actually down this year to last year, about 5% in camper nights. And as I speak to my friends around the industry, everyone's down, anywhere from 5 to 10 or 12%. That is presenting occupancy, and we need to continue to push that message that there are places to camp this summer. Tied to that is I do think there's been some changes that we're starting to see in the booking window. So for the past few years, you had to make a reservation many months out, even a year out, to secure your place. And that's definitely changing. We are seeing people embracing the idea of shortening their booking window. 16% saying they plan to do that. They plan to shorten their booking window. Also, as I look at our data at KOA, we're seeing about a 4 to 5% increase in same-day reservations right now. So I think this is signaling this return to spontaneity, the good old days of RV travel 4 years ago, when you could jump in your RV, go on a road trip, and stop where you decided to stop for the night and find a place to camp. And a third of campers are saying they are craving and desiring more spontaneous travel. Also, what's driving booking window is weather. We are seeing a lot of activity, whether that be cancellations, shortening the booking window, shifting to shoulder season, or just changing their travel plans altogether because of weather. Not just rain, but an increase in natural disasters and extreme heat for the first time we're really seeing pop up as a reason people are changing their travel patterns. As a result of that, we've actually seen a lot of campers shifting to the shoulder seasons, and there's been a 21% increase in fall and spring camping over these past couple of years. So that's my little snapshot on what's happening today. And I'm hoping I'm answering some of your questions about what's going on with the camper right now. But I think you're asking the wrong question. And that's what I want to shift to for the remainder of my time this morning, because I think the real question is, where are things headed? Because if I'm here to talk about consumer insights that's going to drive product and experience design, your development cycles take a lot of time, right? Who's a marketer? I know there's a couple marketers. Marketer. There's a few. I'm a marketer. Yeah, good, waving those hands. We can use this stuff right now. We can get really targeted in our digital marketing. We can talk to people specifically, use imagery and messaging to address these things we're seeing on the screen right now. But in order to change how product is designed, or how we change our experience at the campground level or in our dealerships, it takes more time. And the best way to do that I have found, is to look at what's happening in the research and find those little sparks of change. Those little interesting things in the data that start to come together to indicate trends, or maybe just some insight about what's coming next. And so I've pulled together a few of those things today I wanted to touch briefly on. First of all, I want to talk about convenience. There is a lot of things in the data, and even just in consumer behavior in general, that drive towards convenience. And that makes a ton of sense, because we're a very convenience-driven culture. A couple things I'll highlight. Road trips. So for the first time, road trips are outpacing camping. There's actually a 7-point delta between road trips and camping last year. 2/3 of those who take road trips and don't camp say it's just more convenient for them to stay in the hotel than pack up all their equipment and book a campsite and go camping on their road trip. So we have to think about, how can we better deliver upon convenience for those people who are traveling? The next thing I wanted to talk about with convenience is this service of RV delivery to site. So this is becoming really popular in peer-to-peer networks. Someone has an RV, they take it to a campsite, set it up, get it all ready to go, and all the customer has to do is show up and stay in that RV. Like I said, super popular in peer-to-peer networks like Outdoorsy and RV Share right now. And it's a great way to introduce RVing to people who have never done it before. But consider this, 45% of existing RVers, already RV, say they are highly interested in this sort of service. So even our core RV base is interested in more convenience around this activity. In a lot of ways, that service links RVing to glamping, right? It's kind of our form of glamping in the RV space. And I wanted to talk a few minutes about glamping because it's definitely an area that's growing. In fact, it contributed more households to outdoor hospitality than any other segment this year. And the little spark of change I wanted to talk about was how glamping is bringing the hotel industry into this space. So earlier this year, Hilton announced a partnership with AutoCamp, whereby Hilton Honor members can stay in the Airstreams at AutoCamp and receive points. So it's a nice way this is starting to merge. We're also seeing a new hotel segment we call adventure hotels that are targeted specifically towards people who recreate outdoors, people who are kayaking, people who are mountain biking. So if you've heard of lodge camps, field station, this new adventure hotel segment that's targeting people who traditionally would stay at campgrounds. And even many campgrounds, including us, Some of our properties have hotels adjacent to the campground, and I'm starting to work on how we blend the experience. How do we blend the campground and the hotel experience? So we're introducing those hotel guests to a campground environment and creating new funnels of customers. So we'll shift gears a little bit from hotel, luxury, convenience, and glamping to off-grid. A quarter of all camping occurs on private land other than private campgrounds, and you can access those more and more through companies like Harvest Hosts and Hip Camp, continuing to grow in popularity. There was a doubling of interest in backcountry camping. 58% of campers are interested in backcountry camping now. So we're seeing that rise again. People want to be off-grid. They want to be backcountry. And overlanding is extremely popular. So traveling over long distances, exploring remote areas over time. Something like 70% of campers wanted to try overlanding. So this is a new experience people are seeking. So how do we better design product and experience to tap into this off-grid adventure? Overlanding, I'm linking to this bucket I'm calling non-traditional camping. All sorts of things happening here. One of which is car camping. This is literally sleeping in your car. You might be parked at a campsite, but you're sleeping in your car. 17% of camping households identify as car campers. I'm really fascinated by this. This is not a group to dismiss, because a third of car campers are interested in buying RVs. And I tried to dig into this a little bit. One of the driving reasons people are sleeping in their car is safety. So they're probably tent campers that are feeling more secure in their car. So that's a great target for us to reach, to talk about staying securely in an RV. Street camping. Street camping used to be very scant in our data. It never really caught my attention. But 7% of camping this year happened on streets. 45% of RVers say they do sometimes stay just on a street. This is sometimes for expense-saving reasons, but oftentimes related to convenience, which we talked about this morning. And then the whole other spectrum is no car camping. This is people coming to campsites using public transportation or other forms of transportation to get to the campground. You know, half of this is coming from urban areas, but it's an increasing area that I'm keeping an eye on. How can we better target and create access for people in urban areas to come camping? It's a real rich area of opportunity. And finally, winter camping. 30% of people say they winter camped. This is not taking your RV to Florida and camping in the winter months, which a lot of people here do. This is literally camping in freezing temperatures and when it's snowing. This is growing. 2/3 of campers say they are interested in winter camping vacations. So how do we design product and experience to address those type of temperature changes? And I had a really good conversation on the break about this, so I was glad I included this morning, is I don't think that we can talk about camper profile with a focus on the future without talking about accessibility. Over 40% of camping households say a member of their household has a physical challenge. And particularly when we go back to that statistic of 26% of our camper base are boomers, there is going to be a natural deterioration in physical ability as they age. These are already people that are camping. How do we keep them camping and enjoying their outdoor experience? This is a big area of opportunity, and I think if we can really reframe around it, we can position this industry versus other forms of travel who may not, meet the needs of this group very well. Also, 30% of camping households have a neurodivergent member. And this is increased specifically with younger generations. So this is our future camper base, has neurodivergent needs. So we need to pay particular attention for that not just in our product or our on-site experience, but in our online experience, and be very cognizant about how we're meeting neurodivergent needs. So those are a few sparks I picked up out of our research, but I always think it's important to look broader category, and I could probably go on a lot longer about that, but a few things I would pull out is personalization. Our whole lives are becoming personalized in how you're marketed to, in retail experience. And everything we do is around personalization, and that's what customers want more of. That's all driven by data. You have to invest in data, wholeheartedly believe in that, to know your customer so you can work on delivering personalized experience online in how they find you, and how they shop your product, and how they design product. We're even seeing personalization coming into the camping area. They want things delivered to the campsite, personal to their experience they're looking to have. Data is directly related to AI. I can't believe it hasn't come up yet today. This is the biggest disruptor we're going to have, and we're already seeing it. I'm a huge proponent and very, very excited about all of the efficiencies AI is going to bring into our businesses. But our campers are already using it for travel planning. 50% of campers say they're using AI tools to plan their travel. And there's been some great new products released. Road Trippers just released an AI-generated tool, which is great. Campers are also using AI for customer service. We have an AI chatbot on our website, and it's really interesting to see the things that people are asking it. It's indexed against our content and how we can deliver better customer service. But AI is evolving so rapidly that it's moving towards more real-time interventions. So there's pins being developed that people will wear. It's going to be integrated in wearable technologies. So in the moment, you can access AI to help you. This is a great way that technology will provide a utility in the camping experience to, again, ease those points of friction. Think about how AI might integrate into an RV. You know, tell people real-time traffic updates, help with problems, help park the RV. There's all sorts of things we can explore and leverage, and it's coming at us very quickly. And that's all linked to everything happening in auto. And you guys probably watch that a lot more closely than I do, but a few things I find are very interesting are different trends in mobility around EV, which we're working on here, but cars are now bi-directional charging, right? That provides even more utility to that car. And autonomous driven vehicles, you can go to many cities now across the country and get in an autonomously driven taxi. I saw them in Phoenix just a couple weeks ago. With that, these vehicles are being connected into smart cities. Imagine if our RVs are connected into those smart cities, or if campgrounds become smart and we have interconnection between our campgrounds and our product. And with self-driving cars and all that's changing there, they're actually working on how do you make the car an entertainment center? If people aren't going to be driving the car, how do we entertain people in their cars? And we already know people are sleeping in their cars, which we just talked about. So if they're sleeping in their cars and they're entertained in their cars, that feels a lot like the product that's being created by all of you. So you have to really watch what's happening in auto and leverage it and stay ahead of it, because that's what people are going to start to expect in other parts of their life. So in our short time today, we've talked about how far we've come, some interesting things that are happening right now, the high engagement we have with our camper base, and hopefully starting to show you how we have to think about the future and some of the sparks I've seen in our data that's indicating where things might be headed. We really have to fight that tendency for near-termism and being really focused on today or the next year or two. And the best ways we can do that is leverage data and take it from, it's a nice to know KOA's research, I hear that a lot. Take nice to know research to I need to use research, I need to use data. And if we can collectively, again, rally around some of these changes, I think we can really position this industry really well against other forms of travel. Because we're not competing against ourselves. Sure, there is some friendly competition, but really, collectively, we're competing for people's time and how they spend their leisure dollars. And by delivering on convenience, thinking about data usage for personalization, leveraging trends in technology, in AI, watching what's happening in mobility and retail and other areas, we can advance to meet those customer needs too and really deliver upon something very special. Lots to talk about, always. If you're interested in some of our research, you can click that QR code. It'll take you to our report that was released yesterday. And as those micro reports are released, they'll be added to that website as well. Anytime, please get in touch. We love to dig deeper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toby. Absolutely fascinating and valuable information, always. Before we call up our final speaker for this year's 2024 Power Breakfast, we have a special video message from Darryl Searer. Darryl, of course, has been the president of the RVMH Hall of Fame for the last 12 years.
Good morning, RV Power Breakfast guests. This is a room full of our industry's brightest stars. I remember one such star 2 years ago at the sold-out breakfast in Ingram Hall making the comment on stage that we will soon need a bigger space. Well, the room we're in today is more than double the size. My name is Darryl Searer. I've been the voluntary president for the RVMH Hall of Fame for over 12 years. During that time, I'm proud to say that every goal we set has been accomplished, fitting our corporate goal to always exceed customer expectations. In 2016, we developed our vision of the future, and after several successful campaigns, the hall became debt-free in March of 2019. Immediately after, thanks to Thor Industries, we developed the 27 Eastern acres, adding over 1 million square feet of parking and a year-round pavilion. In 2020, we built and paid for the 21,000 square foot manufactured housing museum. And finally, we built and paid for phase 1 of this 36,000 square foot convention center we are sitting in today. My final dream before the end of 2024 is to see the second phase of this convention hall come to fruition. This requires a $2 million fundraising campaign that will establish this facility as a turnkey operation, providing state-of-the-art audio, video, and event resources, adding convenience and lower costs for our customers. At this point, we will be fully equipped to serve a regional audience. A study done by Johnson Consulting Group out of Chicago estimated that upon completion of phase 2, over $30 million per year will be brought into the Elkhart economy from outside sources. The event center will always be a strong resource for the community, and the hall itself will have a healthy endowment and structure going forward as the crown jewel of both industries. There are many of you in this room who can financially assist with this campaign. If you are interested or need more information, please contact me at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you, Darryl. Before we bring up our final speaker, please indulge me. I told my wife, actually she dared me to do this, so I'm going to do it. Thank you. To introduce our final speaker, economist Bernie Baumohl, I'd like to ask Bob Parrish of Wells Fargo to come to the stage. And as Bob makes his way to the podium, we want to thank Wells Fargo for, again, sponsoring our Economist presentation. Also, one final reminder, about 15 minutes after Bernie's presentation, he will be available right here for a more intimate Q&A session. Bob?
Uh-oh. Do you need another selfie? Good morning. Our next speaker is Chief Global Economist at the Economic Outlook Group of Princeton, New Jersey. He is well known for being ahead of the curve in assessing the direction of the U.S. and world economy. The Wall Street Journal ranked him the most accurate forecaster in a major survey of economists in 2019. He began his career with the Council on Foreign Relations, a think tank specializing in international affairs and national security, and has since served in many other distinctive capacities. He is a member of Wall Street Journal's Economic Forecast Panel, and his projections on the economy and geopolitical outlook are frequently cited in the news media. He holds an MA in International Affairs and Economics from Columbia University. Please welcome Bernie Baumohl.
Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for that very generous introduction. It's greatly appreciated. All right, well, good morning, everyone. I am delighted, really delighted to be here. And I have to tell you, I have met some really wonderful people in the RV industry, and especially in the last day since I arrived. And I personally want to thank them for the hospitality that they've shown me. All right, so look, I've got about 30, 35 minutes, and I've got a lot of ground to cover. It'll deal with the economic outlook and what the implications are for the RV lifestyle. Now, I think the best way, though, for me to actually begin is to share with you the three questions that I now get most, from clients and from journalists and from others. So let me just throw them out to you right now. Number one, we have some strange presidential election coming up in November. What does that mean for the economy? Question number two, when will the Federal Reserve begin to cut interest rates? All right, they're pretty high. Some people are hurting. Can we see some cuts this year, or will the Federal Reserve delay it until after the elections or perhaps 2025? The third question, the geopolitical conflicts going around. This is crazy. It's hard to actually get some sleep or watching the news these days. So is the situation going to get worse, or are we finally going to see some of the tensions around the world subside? Those are the three most common questions that I get. And you can kind of distill all those three questions into really one. What is the trajectory of the economy for the rest of this year, 2025 and 2026? And for us to get a better handle, a better grasp, to answer that question, we're going to have to zoom out. We're going to have to get a macro, broad picture of what's going on in the economy. So let me show you this first slide, which tells you the four key forces that are affecting the U.S. and international economy. And the top circle on the left, the geopolitical risks. And we've got wars going on, as you know, in Europe, between Russia and Ukraine, and I do expect that will continue for pretty much the rest of this year. There's also, obviously, the conflict in the Middle East. It might reach some sort of a climax in the next couple of weeks, and then we expect to subside by summer and for the second half of the year. There are also growing tensions between China and U.S. over Taiwan, and then there's some also now friction developing between Venezuela and Guyana. Guyana found a massive new oil field and ready to develop it, and they've contracted American companies to come down to help produce it. And Venezuela suddenly said, hey, you know what, I think that real estate belongs to us. And so there's some tensions brewing there that could lead to a conflict down the road. And then we've also got a series of presidential elections taking place, not just in the U.S., but around the world. Elections in Venezuela, in Mexico, in India, and how those elections play out can also have an effect on foreign and economic policy. If you look at the circle on the right, I mentioned a moment ago was about interest rates and inflation. Inflation has been in the news, of course, all year. It has been coming down, and so there is this expectation that the Federal Reserve will finally cut. Everybody is waiting, I think, for those cuts to begin. The bottom left circle deals with China and Europe. These are among the two largest economic regions in the world. and they are really not going to be contributing much to economic growth. You know, China's beset with a whole host of problems, from the property crisis to very weak domestic demand to large amounts of debt and deflation. So they're not going to help. They're not going to really contribute much. And whatever GDP figures you hear coming out of from China, you know, there is some reason that they lack credibility. They try to look good, but frankly, I think they just barely avoided recession last year. Europe has been in recession toward the second half of last year, largely because of the really large economic problems that Germany's been having, and where Germany goes, pretty much the rest of Europe goes as well. And then at the far right, at the bottom right, you see the fragmentation of global trade. Multinational companies are now engaged in a top-to-bottom review of their global supply chain strategies. They have recognized the fragilities, the frailties of their current supply chain systems that they've put in place. They see all the risks that are out there, and they're trying to figure out what's a better way for us to have better control, greater simplicity of supply chains in the future. And this is going to fundamentally change global trade patterns over the course of the next couple of years. So these are the key forces. Now I want to begin first with inflation and with interest rates. We have seen the rate of inflation begin to drop. And that box that you see, that box sort of colored pink a little bit, that's just the fall that we're seeing in inflation on the internet, in the international arena. All right? So many countries have all recognized that inflation has been dropping. The larger graph, the two lines that you see there, deals with U.S. inflation. And I did not choose the CPI, and the reason I didn't choose the Consumer Price Index to discuss inflation is because that's not what the Federal Reserve is looking at. They have their own favorite inflation metric, and that is how they're going to decide on monetary policy. Now, the name of that metric, and please forgive me, I'm going to say it, and then you don't need to remember it, but it's called the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index. And it's considered a more dynamic, a better measure of where inflation is going. And that, too, as you see, it has been dropping. And I expect that it will continue to fall for several reasons. First of all, wages are not growing as rapidly as they did a year ago, in large part because of immigration coming in, and also because we have seen a sort of a cooling, a slight cooling, a slowdown in the pace of hiring in the U.S. Also interesting to note is that energy prices have been remarkably stable, even in light of all the turbulence that we're seeing in the Middle East. Gasoline prices, for example, right now, the average price of retail gasoline, just barely a couple of cents above what it was a year ago. It's about a dime higher than what it was a year ago at this time. We've also seen an increase in productivity that's helped bring some inflation down. And finally, and this is not a subject that's often mentioned much, China is dumping a lot of goods into the international trading market right now. Because China's economy is so weak, there's not much domestic demand, but their manufacturing sector just keeps on putting out product. So there's a lot of inventory, and they need to get rid of that inventory, and what they're doing in essence is just dumping that into the international market. And we're talking about anywhere from raw material like steel all the way to EVs. Now, a lot of countries obviously are really furious about that, and I'm sure they're going to all be taking steps at one point, but in the meantime, it is having a deflationary impact on the U.S. And I think Matt Wagner actually made a reference to that. Even in the RV industry, that we're beginning to see the price of some raw material and intermediate goods actually show deflation, where prices have dropped compared to what it was a year ago. So what does this mean in terms of the Federal Reserve? Because there is a debate going on now about whether the Fed is going to raise rates, whether the Fed, will be cutting rates, and when. And the debate is, why should the Federal Reserve cut rates? The economy is doing so well. What's the rush in slashing rates right now? Maybe they're better off just waiting after the election or next year. And I'm going to tell you right now, if they hold off, if they postpone cutting rates, I think that would be an egregious mistake, because there are some sectors in the economy that are really hurting. The commercial real estate sector, for example, is having some real financial distress particularly office buildings, retail sectors, and also even in some cases the lodging industry. So they're hurting. Households making less than $50,000, they're also experiencing a lot of financial woes because of high interest rates as well. So I think, and by the way, even the RV industry is having issues. You know, you have to finance the inventory, and of course, buyers who purchase RVs are going to have to deal with the higher interest rate environment as well. I'm expecting the Federal Reserve will have its first rate cut in July of this year, and then they'll wait for the second one probably toward, after the elections. But I do expect 50 basis points in total for the year to come down on the Fed funds rate, the key benchmark for short-term rates, and another four cuts in 2025. As I said before, I mean, it's getting quite intense for a lot of households. We have a record amount of debt, $17.5 trillion in household debt right now. Credit card debt also at record high levels. So it's gonna make an impact. Even the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, has made a reference to some of the distress being seen in households. But here is something that's really interesting. In spite of all that debt, the chart shows that most households are actually able to service that debt without any stress. Now you see, by the way, on the top right, you see Fred on the top right corner. Fred is not some uncle that I have that produced these graphs. Right? Fred is an acronym for the Federal Reserve Economic Database. So what you see, this is what they see. This is a reflection of what's really going on in the economy right now. And you can see here from this that household debt service, this is on credit cards, on auto loans, and on mortgages. For each dollar that you take home, less than a dime right now is spent on that debt. And you may wonder, how is that possible? And here's the reason why. Right? 70% of household debt are mortgages. And a lot of people actually refinanced their mortgage when mortgage rates had dropped a year or two ago down to around 3%, in some cases even below 3%. Some households, by the way, are usually willing to pay off their entire balance on their credit card. So there is no outstanding amount in the following months that's being carried over. So there are a lot of reasons why it turns out that the debt burden is really quite low by historical standards, even now. Now, this is one of the reasons why we see that consumer confidence levels, consumer sentiment, is still quite high. Now, these are some very recent numbers. People are still optimistic about their finances, about the outlook for the economy. Right now, they can tell pollsters that they feel good about the economy, but what are they really doing with their money? Because that's the real indicator as to just how consumers feel. And here you can see at the bottom, personal spending also is quite high. It's bounced back nicely for February and in March. We haven't yet gotten the April figures for personal spending. That'll come in at the end of this month. Now, why are consumers still spending so willingly? Oh, by the way, there was one other reason why the debt burden has been so low. And that's because the job market's still strong. So people are actually earning money. That money is coming in, and that also helps to offset that burden. Now, the job market, as I mentioned ago, is still strong. It's still quite robust. Right? Employers are really reluctant to lay off workers. Every week we get these numbers, claims for unemployment benefits. People who have been laid off and then file an application to get jobless benefits. And those numbers are still remarkably low. They're lower now than what they were pre-pandemic at this point. Another thing to keep in mind, the unemployment rate, still below 4%. For the month of April, it was 3.9%. We have had about 27 consecutive months with the unemployment rate below 4%. We have not seen that in half a century. So the job market's still firm, and here on the box on the right, you see real disposable personal income. In other words, purchasing power. This is money that you take home and adjusted for inflation. And so long as real disposable personal income is positive, it means that you're earning, that your wages are growing more than the rate of inflation. That gives you more purchasing power, and you're willing to go out and spend. So what are they spending on? All right, this is some of the data that you can see here on actual outlays. This is real spending now. All right, this is already adjusted for inflation. So we're talking about the volume of goods and services that people are purchasing. So the black bar represents purchases of goods, hard goods, okay, durable and non-durable goods, so vehicles all the way to food and clothing. And the green line, the green bar represents services. Now, services is a pretty broad field. You know, it's insurance, it's travel and tourism, it's haircuts, dentists, pedicures, all in services. So let's see if we can drill down further into services and focus on recreational services. Are consumers, spending a lot more on recreational services? And so the next graph you'll see the recreational services component is going to be in red. And you can see here too, it's bounced back, really quite nicely. This is recreational services, which has been defined by the government as sort of spending on campgrounds, RV parks, amusement parks, and also spectator sports. I mean, it's a fairly large indicator, it covers a lot of different fields, but people are willing to go out and enjoy and spending on these services. And we've seen a record amount, by the way, of money that's been spent on RV parks and recreational camps. The most ever, $2.39 billion in 2023. And there are some really interesting reasons, some of which was already brought up. First of all, we're seeing a record number of baby boomers retiring, and they want to just get on the road. They want to do some traveling now. They want to enjoy life. They want to see the U.S. And so they're willing, certainly, to go out and spend and either purchase or rent RVs for that experience. What's more fascinating to me is that there's actually a younger generation, all right, that has a slightly different value system now. They're less interested in buying hard goods like a flat screen TV or another, desktop. What they want to do, they're willing to engage in experiential spending. They want to go out and see the world. They want to be able to enjoy life out of that apartment, out of that house. And so we're seeing that trend pick up as well. And then, of course, the passage of the Explore Act, too, which Craig Kirby mentioned, the passage out of the House also is important and will help, I think, fuel more spending for the recreational camps that are out there. And the Senate should be picking it up and vote within the next weeks, and I expect that will pass as well. Now, what about energy prices looking ahead? I have to tell you, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you about this. Forecasting energy prices is not a respectable human activity. It's kind of a waste of time because, there's so many events that are happening from economic to geopolitical that are constantly buffeting the price of energy. It's either some cases lifting energy prices, other cases lowering it. So it's really difficult to get a handle. But all we can say at this moment is that, number one, even given the turbulence that we're seeing in the Middle East, that the price of oil has been remarkably stable. The vertical bars represents the outlook for WTI oil, or in the U.S., and it's going to hold pretty stably around 70, 80, in this $80 range. We don't see it getting close to 90. We don't see it certainly into the triple digits for at least the next 15 months. Beyond that, it's very difficult to make any projections with respect to oil. The red line represents Brent, which is the global price, and here too, that's always a couple of dollars more than WTI oil. And then the box that you see in the middle of the screen represents the wholesale price of natural gas, and here too, it's fairly stable. We're not going to be seeing it significantly rise to where it was a couple of years ago, up in the $12 to $15 range. It's going to be settling below $3 per million BTUs. And that too I think is an encouraging sign, because obviously energy is a critical component in the cost of manufacturing goods, and of course for households it has an effect on the price of gasoline. So what, if you summarize it, what we're seeing is that the robust job market, still healthy consumer confidence, and a younger generation that really relishes to go out and enjoy the outdoors and have life experiences, we are seeing overall spending on travel and tourism, a much broader indicator of what people are willing to spend. That's going to be increasing probably at a faster rate than we have seen in the past. We're expecting it actually to accelerate. All right, I want to just discuss quickly a little bit on the supply chain issues, because manufacturers and certainly some suppliers do rely on importing goods from overseas. Now, I have to tell you, the supply chain paralysis that was triggered by the pandemic, that has mostly faded. That's mostly gone. All right? But there are still some areas of concern with respect to the supply chain, global supply chains, that cannot be ignored. So you've got here 3 areas in the world which are very important maritime routes for trade. On the left, obviously concerns the war going on in the Middle East and the fact that there has been some attempt to disrupt supply chains when in the Houthis in Yemen were firing off drones and missiles at ships. And as a result, the ships had either 2 choices. Either they were willing to take the risk of going through the Red Sea and into the Suez Canal, but if they did that, they were going to have to pay a hefty war insurance premium that's been imposed on them by the Lloyd's of London. Or they can just go around the coast of Africa. It's an additional 3,500 miles. Right? It adds a couple of extra days. So at worst, it'll delay the availability of some of these goods. And yeah, it raises the price a little bit of those container ships, but not that much. At the price of a 40-foot container ship now, about $3,500 for these sorts of trips. That is nowhere near what it was during the supply chain paralysis days, when it was up around $20,000. Now, the box in the middle deals with the supply chain issues, traffic actually in the Panama Canal. Panama had a terrible drought last year, and there was not enough water in the Panama Canal locks to transport these ships. So it remains to be seen whether the weather will improve this spring and into the summer, and whether they get more rain. But what's happened is they had to cut back dramatically on the number of tanker ships and cargo ships that would pass through the Panama Canal. As a result, there have been more and more ships waiting for their turn. And then some guy in the Panama Canal Authority came up with a brilliant idea. He said, hey, we can make more money. How? We're going to charge extra for those tankers and cargo ships that are willing to be in the front of the line, to get priority. And that's what they actually did last year and into this year. It's an additional source of revenues for them, giving priority for those, but you got to pay up just to get that front of the line. On the far right deals, of course, with the South China Sea and China. China has certainly intimidated, a lot of shipping, particularly by the Philippines and Vietnam, that was trying to take advantage of just fish and get some of the economic resources that are in the South China Sea. Yet China has decided that the entire area of the South China Sea, or almost all of it, is now part of their sovereign control. And they have this 9-dash line that they that they had listed for years, and then just last September, they said, you know what? It's not enough to have 9. We're going to toss in one more dash. And so they introduced a 10-dash line. And if you look at the upper right part of that screen, you know where they put that 10th dash line? They put it actually just outside now. It's actually engulfed Taiwan. That's what they control. Now, I think this is a very important point to make. The Philippines filed a complaint with the International Court of Arbitration saying, China can't do this. What legal basis do they have to simply claim sovereign control over this massive body of water? And the Court of Arbitration at The Hague listened to the arguments, looked at the historical data, and they concluded that no, they have no legal right. They have no legal right to the South China Sea. And by the way, their decision has legal standing, international legal standing, and yet China has decided to completely ignore that decision. And so, as a result, the geopolitical tensions will continue, and I expect it'll rise, but I do not foresee, and I think we all hope this will not happen, of a direct military confrontation in the South China Sea between the U.S. And China. But the tensions are still there, particularly on the supply side. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies are reassessing, reevaluating their supply chain strategies. They are just tired of all the tensions. They don't see really a significant decline in geopolitical tensions down over the course of the next couple of years. They probably anticipate more supply chain issues. So they're asking again, how can we fundamentally change this so that our supply chains can be more simple, more dependable, and have better control? Some of them may decide to look at other Asian countries as they move their plants and their facilities outside of China. But there really aren't very many options, because most of the other Asian countries, except maybe India, but most of the other Asian countries, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Thailand, they just don't have the infrastructure or the labor or the skills that China has had. So now the issue that many of them are having is, look, let's be realistic. Maybe we should begin to move away from those adversarial countries and try to set up our plants and our facilities in more friendlier venues. And they've done it, and they've been actually induced into doing so, particularly in North America, in Mexico, the United States, and Canada. Mexico has benefited greatly in particular with having all that foreign capital come in. But the U.S., and here's what's really so cool, I mean, it's really cool. The U.S. is now seeing a rebirth, a renaissance, a reascendancy of manufacturing here in this country for really two main reasons. First, there's all this new technology that's being available, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, robotics, cloud computing. And the other factor is that the U.S. government is going all out to provide incentives, to provide subsidies to get companies to domicile their plants back in the U.S. So the combination of all this technology and the incentives by the U.S. government has actually begun to change the economic equation for producing goods in the U.S. and at a competitive price. This is the renaissance that we're seeing in manufacturing, and here is a case in point. This is construction of manufacturing plants in the U.S., and it has skyrocketed with the passage of the CHIPS and the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, just taken off like a rocket. Last year, this is a stunning number, last year, the amount of money that was spent on expanding manufacturing facilities averaged each month more than $16 billion. So this industry, manufacturing, is really going to be growing here, and obviously it's going to cause some competition as they all try to compete for skilled labor. And we can see the reflection also on the employment side as well. Employment right now in manufacturing is greater than what it was prior to the pandemic. And I just put on the graph on the bottom the employment in manufacturing here in the Elkhart-Goshen region for Motor Vehicle Bureau and the trailer manufacturing. And yeah, it did slip, but I have no doubt that as the economy continues to improve, there'll be a greater demand for RVs, and I think the employment will kind of pick up again. So what is the outlook that we have for the U.S. economy? So we're looking at GDP growth this year, 2.3%, next year at 2.6%, even stronger, and 2.2% in 2026. And you can see at the very bottom are the Federal Reserve's forecasts. They're showing an economy a bit weaker than what we're expecting, but I have no doubt that they'll finally move up to our way of thinking. over the course of the next couple of weeks. Now, we did make some assumptions. Some of you may not be able to read them. I'll just quickly make a reference to them. So the Middle East conflict does not expand into a much broader regional war. It'll be limited to between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. But again, as I said earlier, it should be coming to a climax very soon, and we should see some of that activity, military activity, begin to subside in the second half of this year. Russia's war in Ukraine will likely continue for the rest of this year. We do not expect to see any major military confrontation between the U.S. and China. And finally, and this is something that we have to do when we're making forecasts, we have to base it on current existing fiscal and spending policies for 2025 and 2026. So the assumption here, at least on this slide, is that President Biden will win the election. Now, this was the scary part. So now, I have to show you, because we've just done this recently, is we've taken a look at the policies proposed by President Biden and the policies also proposed by former President Donald Trump. And we've done the analysis, we put it in a model, and I'll show you in a moment, what the results were from those two. By the way, this chart, and I'm not even going to bother too much time on this, this is basically looking at a quarter-by-quarter basis as to what the economy is going to do. And I do expect that the economy to continue to grow. I do not see a recession, certainly not this year, nor really in the next 2 years. I do expect inflation to kind of stabilize in the sort of 2 to 3% range. And we do think that inflation was going to be coming down, not just on the short end, but also on the 10-year Treasury, which is a very important benchmark for the cost of capital. Okay, so here on this table, I have put down the individual tax and spending policies and trade policies between President Biden and former President Trump. And we've had to take a look at them very, very carefully. And there's never enough time to kind of cover all this in detail. But it does appear, and this is just from our conclusion, which has been actually confirmed by a number of very conservative organizations, that the national debt will likely increase by a lot more under the policies that come under President Trump. Because under President Biden, he's actually allowing to continue, first of all, the tax cuts that have been passed on the personal side, which, by the way, expires at the end of 2025, no longer exists on 2026. And what he says, he's going to continue the tax cuts, but for those making over $400,000, there's going to be an increase in taxes. So there's some additional revenues that's coming in. Biden has also talked about increasing taxes, as you can see here, also for corporate taxes as well. Again, bringing in revenues. The goal here is to raise taxes in a way is not to hurt the economy, at least that's their plan, but at least to make sure that the deficit isn't going to be that big. Based on the proposals that we've seen from President Trump, we're expecting also he's going to allow to make those personal tax cuts permanent, but there's no offset. We're really not seeing any increase in revenues except for one major area, and that's tariffs. So President Trump has issued, his plan was that when he finally gets into the White House, if he wins, he's going to first of all put in a 10% universal tariff on all goods importing into the United States. And by the way, that 10% tariff even includes goods coming in from Canada and from Mexico. So you have to ask your question, well, what good's the USMCA deal if he's still going to be including the US and Mexico? Then 60% on all tariffs, on all imports coming in from China. And somebody then raised the question, I think, to President Trump, well, what are you going to do about EVs that are coming in not from China, but suppose China builds EV plants in Mexico and then ships it into the United States? And President Trump said he's going to tax those vehicles at 100%. Now, there is a time and there is a place for tariffs. There's no doubt about it. But you have to be very careful because it can backfire. Because the group that pays the tariff are the importers. The importers are the ones that pays the U.S. government. And then the importers have to decide whether they pass on those extra costs, to their customers. If they do, this could lead to higher inflation. Then there's another reaction we may see. Countries are not just going to sit still and allow these tariffs. There could be retaliatory action on the part of those countries. And they're going to say, oh yeah? Well, if you're going to raise tariffs, those other countries are going to raise tariffs on U.S. goods coming in. And this creates a problem for U.S. exporters. So there are a lot of issues to take into consideration when you suddenly have this blanket increase in tariffs. So when we put together the model for the differences, what we're seeing is that the Biden administration, you can see averaging growth around 2 to 2.5% for the next 3 years, and we're seeing slightly less growth under the President Trump's policies. And again, these forecasts have been actually kind of verified by the Tax Foundation, a very conservative group, the National Tax Policy Center, the Committee for Responsible Budget. All of them are genuinely concerned about the lack of revenue that's being created by the Trump Committee, and by the fact that they're really concerned about the tariffs that have been proposed. Okay, I'm going to wind up with this slide, which is basically, what do we do about this as a business? What steps, what precautions, what recommendations do I have for companies? Because clearly there's a paradigm shift in how the world now works. The focus, broadly speaking, that I'm saying is important for companies to make sure that they can operate, to have a nimble operation, that they're agile, that they're flexible, and that they're adaptive to all sorts of environments. So how do you do that? So here are 5 recommendations that I'm making. Number 1, invest in technology that goes directly to improving the productivity of your workforce. This is really important. You can't lose if you do something like that. That increases your overall productivity, it increases your operating efficiencies, and it improves, obviously, your margins. You can't lose by investing and making sure to improve the productivity of your workforce. Second, conduct stress of power failure, an extraordinary power failure, system-wide. Can you function? What if there are supply chain stoppages? What if you no longer have access to your bank credit lines? And what if there's a new pandemic? This is really important. Now, some companies will say, well, wait a minute, if there's a power failure, familiar with, all right? And they can function. If there's a massive power failure, the electrical grid is shut down, this company, zero capable vulnerabilities. They won't necessarily take advantage of it by, trying to extort the company. What they will do is they will sell that information. They will show you how to get into that backdoor entry, selling it into a dark shadow market and get the highest bid. That's often how it works now in that sector, in that industry. All right, also reduce your geopolitical exposure, particularly to hotspots. Look at the cost of benefits of relocating to friendlier venues and diversify those supply chains and other sources. And finally, that last point, make sure you've got a contingency plan in place that can be implemented immediately should the next shock, and it is inevitable that there will be another shock, that you can actually put in place that will protect your business so that it can keep functioning, so that it can provide the goods and services to the customers. Because being a reliable provider of goods and services during periods of extreme shocks, that enhances your reputational value. And investors and credit rating agencies and bankers will take note. They will look favorably. They will reward you, for your resilience. I just want to end with this a personal experience that I had. We started taking some of our own suggestions, and we moved about 2 years ago into a new office building, and we had solar panels, had a very secure internet system set up. And when we first moved in, we found a box of flowers waiting for us. It was a very lovely gesture. We don't know who it was. And so we looked at the flowers. There was a card that came with it, and we eagerly looked at the card, and it read, "Please accept our deepest condolences." Well, that's odd. Why would somebody send us flowers with that card? So we called up the flower shop and told them about these, the flowers we got in the card, and they said they would call us back, they'd look into the matter, call us back immediately, which they did. And they apologized profusely. They said there was an accidental switch made, and the flowers that we were supposed to get went to someone at a funeral home. And when they got those flowers and they looked at the card, it said, "Best wishes on your new location." So you can be sure we're not going to be using that flower shop in the future. Anyway, I see that my time is up. First of all, thank you very much for the time you've given me, and I'll be very happy to be on the side and answer any other questions that you have individually. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Bernie. A lot of information to chew on. One final word before we exit. Please, 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 please exercise patience in making your way out of here. We have 1,350 people here today, and not everyone can be the first one out of the parking lot. That concludes the 2024 RV Industry Power Breakfast. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our sponsors, and let's be careful out there.